Hey guys, welcome to Wrestling Daze and welcome to this opinions video for the Firefly Funhouse / promos. I asked you the question, where is the Wyatt 6 going to be doing their promos? We know that it's in like an abandoned Firefly Funhouse at the moment, but are we going to keep doing them there? Are we going to go somewhere else? We know that the Wyatt family used like cabins in the woods. They did promos in the woods. Bray did Firefly Funhouse. He had a big set that he did his big episodes in, and then he had a smaller set that was kind of like backstage. So, I mean, there was lots of variation as to where the promos were taking place. So, yeah, this is definitely something that I think we need to give some consideration to. So I'm interested to know as to what you guys think. We are going to start with a little bit of a downer, just a little downer. This is footage that I haven't been looking for, but it's footage I've been interested in seeing. You might remember on Monday when Nikki crawled her way into the ring. We actually had the security guards like on top of the commentary table. Michael Cole kind of implying that someone had attacked the security guards. Well, we never saw an attack. So the question has always been, what happened? And we can actually see, it's not very clear, but you can see the security guards are back here. The lights go out. If you look at the top part of the table, that stays illuminated. And you can see the security guards, there's their hand, look. They kind of get up and they walk over and they sort of put themselves there. So unfortunately, there is no actual attack. I just think this is a bit naive from WWE. Just think that this is the kind of little attention to detail that's missing. It would have been better to have had Rowan or Gacy or Dexter Loomis or someone come out and attack them. But instead, it looks like the security guards just sort of get up and then move themselves into that position. You can see them like get up, move over. It's not, I mean, what I will say is it's not very clear, but you can see that no one actually attacks them. You can sort of see the security guard's arm here where he's kind of got himself on top of the table. I think the other security guard's doing the same over here, right? So here's Michael who said, I'm not a fan of the security guards just diving on top of the table. Did they really think this wouldn't surface? And honestly, I agree. I can't see why you wouldn't have just had someone come out and attack them. And, you know, for the security guards to do that, that probably explains why some of the faces, if you go back and look, some of the faces in this front row, when Nikki's giving the box over, it's people just sort of like shaking their heads. It's people that seemingly aren't on board with it. And, we want everyone to enjoy this, and we want everyone to be on board with it, and you're never going to get everything right. You're never going to be able to make everything perfect. But that is a pretty weird decision, to just have the security guards chuck themselves onto the commentary table, rather than have someone come down and at least make it look a little bit realistic, you know? So, yeah, Michael, appreciate you sharing that footage. That was footage that I did want to see, because I did wonder as to what had happened there and how the security guards had been attacked. So it is what it is. Right, let's get back to the main question, shall we? So Trey said, I think all of them, but more others will have their own rooms. The Funhouse will be the main area, but they all get their own rooms. I think that's really interesting. I like that. Might be a bit difficult to give them all their own space backstage, because every time they want to cut a promo, you're probably not going to want to have to go to Tom Savini's studio to like film it, you know? The Firefly Funhouse is, I believe, at Tom Savini's studio, and it's a proper studio. So, like, I'd imagine it costs quite a bit to film those, because you need cameramen, sound men. It's all a proper set and a proper staging. So you might need something scaled down a little bit backstage. You might remember Bray had that. Bray had the big Funhouse, and then he also had like a much smaller scaled down one where there was no door, there was no window. It was basically a bit tighter, and it was a table, and it was the blue wall, and you had the key pictures, and the puppets were kind of around him, if you will. It was a much tighter Firefly Funhouse, and that's because it was just backstage. So might be a challenge to give each of the members their own little space, but it would be really cool to see, you know, what does Mercy's bedroom look like? What does Abby's bedroom look like? Do you know what I mean? Like, that could be, I'd imagine Huskus would be in the kitchen. So what does the kitchen look like? That could be really fun. I think that's a great idea. Jaded Chewy said, I think they should do a mix, but something new. Maybe the therapist's office. Well, that could be fun. Again, maybe a bit tricky to do backstage. You can obviously go to the therapist's office, but I think her office was in her house, if I remember that article in the QR code. So that would sort of mean like we're having to break into her house, or we're having to go and visit. Although saying that, if she's sort of involved in a way, just smiling in the corner, and it's quite clear she's more than happy that they keep coming to visit, that might add towards the spookiness of the whole thing. So yeah, I think there's maybe something you could play around with there. Asma said, I love to see different locations for each of the characters. For instance, Ramblin' Rabbit, the cabin, where Rowan first appeared with Bray, Mercy, the woods, Huskus, the funhouse, where Bray called out Bobby, and Abby, the funhouse, with Bray's chair. Okay, love that. Again, I'm trying to think, how do you do that, like, in a backstage setting as well? Because you could always go off to do your promos in these locations, but they're only ever going to be like once in a while. Like on a weekly basis, you're going to need a little something backstage. So can we replicate these things backstage? Maybe we can, maybe we can't. Perhaps we'll have to, you know, do that and do a little something else backstage as well. It's a tricky one, this, to be honest. It's a tricky one. I mean, if you think, like, they'll be doing promos and different kinds of promos individually, promos as a group. They'll be doing different kinds of promos pretty much on a weekly basis. So knowing what location you need, what it is you're going to say, where you need to go and film it, like, you can see this runs the risk of being a logistical nightmare if each character has its own location. But from a visual point of view, I agree, that would be the best. That would look the best, I think. Maybe if it's not even different rooms in the funhouse, but it's just their own houses, you know, where they used to live when we reached out to them, where the notes were delivered to. That could be, maybe there could be something in that. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. So Nick Dragon said, I think they are going to have a grey funhouse. It's going to be Howdy that interviews each person. And the only colour would be the puppet they will be representing. Maybe the puppet will sit next to Howdy so that Abby can look at Nikki and so on. Got you. Wrestling Misfit said, since the whole thing is in the mind of Bray Wyatt, including Uncle Howdy, he was even a character created by Bray. He was constantly on the TV set in the promos from the Funhouse. The Funhouse is the home of the puppets. They should do it where they feel safe. So Funhouse, says Wrestling Misfit. Robert said, I think they will go with the Funhouse. It needs to stay dark, like in recent promos, and then maybe it evolves over time. Since this iteration would be in the mind of Bo, and right now he's in an obviously dark place. It's an interesting one, that about, like, are we seeing in the mind of Bo, right? I mean, we could be. That's obviously a very difficult thing to put onto a videotape. It does require a little bit of going with it, and we know there are people that are not willing to do that, so you will run the risk of alienating some people. Or is it that you actually, I said this the other day, like the Firefly Funhouse, that could still have been what was in Bray's mind. He just brought it to life, you know? This is what's in his head, and he wanted to show us what was in his head, so he created the set, he created the puppets, he filmed the vignettes, so we were still seeing into his mind, It's just he brought it into the real world for us. And I don't know, maybe if that's what Bo could be doing now, is showing us into his mind. And his mind is a much darker place, as you said. So it's one of those. I genuinely don't know. I don't know if they're going down the road of showing us directly into his mind right now, or if they are showing us like what's in his mind brought to life, brought into the real world. So yeah, tricky that one, to be honest, to know which way they're going. I mean, I'm just reminded the fact that they're trying to anchor this a little bit more into the real world. That's what that report said. But, you know, that doesn't mean that absolutely everything they're doing is anchored in the real world. It could be that they're showing us inside someone's mind. So, yeah, okay, interesting. Michael said, I'd love to see a mixture, potential to combine little bits of what we got from Bray before as a nod to him with some new and creative ideas, especially with it being a group now. There'll be a whole host of ideas getting put into the mix, law of averages kind of thing. Alira says, all the above, a mixture of things to me, but I would love to see how it plays out. Rocksteady said, Daze, I feel like they should do a mix of both. I feel like the group is trying to bring in all the different Bray eras into the story. So Wyatt family, Fiend, Funhouse. I also think if they do Funhouse, it should be more real. Pete said, a decaying, abandoned-looking version of the Funhouse. Each promo from there should look more and more decrepit. Eric said maybe the puppets will turn back to normal for the Funhouse segments, and the puppets will be played by the members when they are alive. Maybe Bo will become the new Funhouse host. So my guess is the Funhouse. That's an interesting thought. Is it that we do Funhouse, Bo is, and Alexa, when she comes back, are the hosts, but they do it with the puppets? But then, obviously, when it's time to have matches, we know who those puppets are. They're going to be Dexter, they're going to be Joe Gacy, they're going to be Nikki Cross, and we've seen what they look like when they've been brought to life. So that's an interesting one. The only thing I'd say about that is that would kind of mean that probably you're not going to see a great deal of them during the promos if you go down that road, which I think would be a little bit of a shame. Also, I think that Bray, it was Bray's voice that voiced a lot of those puppets. So, you know, you're going to hear a difference in the voice now that Bray is no longer with us. I don't think that's a massive problem, but it might be something that just sounds a little off, sounds a little different, because I think it was actually Bray that did a lot of those voices. Right. Jason said, I think it should be a dark Firefly Funhouse. All the puppets are loose. It's not a place that they're trapped anymore. Ramblin' Rabbit and Abby always talked about being trapped. They're out. Bray's gone. Bo is hurt. It's a dark place. Keep that. Lord Vladimir says, psychiatric segments, the Funhouse. It is there literally in the mind. Remember the emphasized lyrics frequently throughout the Nightbird venture into my mind, said Lord Vladimir. Gentleman Red Assassin said, I hope they make a new Wyatt compound that resembles the old one and the Firefly Funhouse as well. Why? Because why the hell not? It's a cool idea. And that way, if any promo of them takes place in some woods or somewhere like the Funhouse, it would make more sense now. I think we are hearing this sort of mixture of eras. I mean, I really like different rooms. I do like that. I think that that's a fun idea. I think mixing the woods and mixing like all these different eras, I think that's a fun idea as well. The Funhouse kind of decaying, if you will, is pretty fun. The only thing I'd say about that is how do we replicate that backstage? Because most of the time, you're not going to be able to constantly keep going to a proper studio to film each promo. You're going to need to be able to do things on the day backstage. So you're going to need to have like smaller backstage, more portable replicas, if you will, of some of these ideas, because you're not always going to be able to go off set. You're going to sometimes need to film just something quick backstage because things change. You know, it might be that you've done this big promo, this massive thing, and then your opponent gets injured. So all of a sudden then you can't do what you was planning on doing, and you do need to do a quick brand new promo, and you can't go over to Tom Savini's studio to record it. Like, do you know what I mean? People get injured, people get sick, people have family bereavements, and it means they're not on the show. There's loads of different reasons as to why people might miss a show. So you might have recorded these killer promos, but you're always going to need that ability to do something quick on the spot and change direction. So you will need a little something backstage as well. I think a lot of these you can create a little something backstage, but like say the woods, that would be quite tricky. I think a cabin would be relatively straightforward. We know the Funhouse was very straightforward. So, again, just something to bear in mind. Diego said the Funhouse fits perfectly as Bray's most iconic location. It pays amazing tribute. They should live there and find a way for Bo to possess the Fiend. Leland said the Firefly Funhouse. Savard said backstage after the Carnage. So you would have some Carnage Massacre summit, and then you'd have the group stand there and cut a promo with just chaos around them. Much like, I suppose, we got with the Massacre when they first arrived. I think the only downside I could see with that is that you're going to have to keep causing carnage every single time they want to do a promo. I think you can do it for the big moments, but what about those kind of week-by-week moments, you know? Kyle said Firefly Funhouse. LFG Fitness said Nikki in the cabin from the QR codes. Mercy from what looks to be a destroyed cage, maybe a jail cell. Huskus in the mud or the woods. Rambling Rabbit in a tunnel with a spiral backdrop. And Uncle Howdy from the cave in the woods. Wrestling Girl said, I believe possibly Alexa's Playground, because that would mean that the Wyatt Six could come full circle and be together finally, all of them. Do you know what's really interesting there? What's really interesting is that you've just touched on something I didn't even think about, and that is when they're in the ring. When they're in the ring, do they just stand there and do their promos? You know, at that point, you can't go to the woods. You can't go here, there, or everywhere. What do? Alexa had Alexa's Playground, which had lots of props. Do we do something like that when they're in the ring? It's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think everyone has focused on those, or a lot of people have focused on those big promos that you do, you know, throughout the year, where, you know, you're kind of like telling these big stories. But what about those little backstage ones where you need a little backstage thing? What about when we're in the ring? Do we just have them standing in a row like the Judgment Day do? Or do we get a bit more adventurous and go down the Alexa's Playground road? And if we did go down that road, what would we do for the group? Would it be Alexa's Playground? Or do we do something else, something different, something more specific to this group? Or maybe you would think that it might look a little cheesy if we did that, and we shouldn't do that. I think they should do promos in the ring. Maybe we don't need props for it, but, well, look, this is the conversation, isn't it? I do like this, though, from Nick Trishon, who says, what a burger. That's exactly where they should be doing their promos. What a burger. And they should be dressed like staff. Jose said, to keep things scary, I would go Woods 80% of the time and Firefly Funhouse 20% of the time. Chet says, I would go to the lake house. Under the shadow of his wings says, all of the above and more. MKR said, a backstage massacre scene. We had that earlier. I think that's going to be a bit tricky to do that every week. I think that will be something that you can definitely do at points, but I don't know that you could do that every week when you wanted to do your promos. Mike said the local Lidl. They do have great pricing. Dante said, I believe they were talking about a cave a while ago, and although we don't think they are talking about a literal cave, I would say a promo in a literal cave, lol, something different. Do you know, I think that it would be good to do a promo in a cave, and maybe, you know, if that's also had maybe some shackles and maybe where a flame used to be, and it's no longer on, and it kind of looks like the physical Plato's cave, you know? And so that could be kind of very interesting. Or if we could find like a really spooky cave that's got like a bit of personality about it itself. I don't disagree with that at all. I think that is a good shout. Again, we're talking about those big promos where all the group's there and you do them not every single week, because you can't do promos. You can't film promos like months and months in advance. There's too many moving parts. There's too many storylines that change it, the injuries and suspensions, blah, 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 blah. So I think you could definitely get away with doing a few promos in there, like we're doing the promos in the Funhouse at the moment. But yeah, I don't know how you would represent that backstage. But yeah, no, I'd be down for that, definitely. Archon said the obvious choice would be the therapist office. Michael said cabin in the woods. Honey says mixture. Andrew, another vote for Firefly Funhouse. But Tazda Beast said mix all of them. It's Vapor said in the ring. If the Wyatt 6 are Bray thoughts, Bray always thought in the ring. Well, I think we might be touching on something there. So they're real, you know, those are real people. The characters were thought up by Bray, but they are obviously Nikki and Dexter, and we know those people, and we know why they've been brought together. So they're not like just a figment of his imagination. So this is where, you know, I think things can get really quite confusing about Bray and Bray's mind. I mean, Bray's no longer with us. We know from the QR codes that as a result of Bray's passing, the puppets were set free. And their personality, if you will, was set free. Howdy found them, found new vessels for them. So this is a very real group. But yeah, I mean, like, do you do it in the ring? And if you do it in the ring, do you base it around Bray? And maybe somehow, I don't know. I mean, would it be too dark if the set was just like a funeral setting? Obviously not with a casket or anything, but you know, like how you could put like some of Bray's work, paintings and whatever, on easels, and maybe there could be like some wreaths that are around. I mean, I don't know if that would be getting too dark. I don't know if people would struggle with stuff like that, but that might be a very interesting in-ring setting, and would also pay respects to Bray as well, because, you know, those are his paintings, maybe some actual paintings that we saw in the documentary. It's very difficult, isn't it, when you're kind of talking about Bray, because you don't want to overstep the mark, you don't want to be disrespectful, and that's certainly not what I was there. I'm trying to find a way, actually, of the opposite, bringing him in more and feature him more. And just it not having big pictures of him in the background, but his paintings. I think, you know, if you don't know what they are, it might not resonate with you, but if you saw the documentary, then you'll know what those paintings were. And wreaths and stuff like that could be interesting. Don't know. I'll be interested in what people's comments are. Ratchet the Owl said, like a cult or a coven, Nikki, Dexter, Rowan Gacy with Bo around a fire in the middle of nowhere. Bo is leading the ceremony, like the Lost Boys when they recruited Michael. They all share how they have been forgotten. At the end, they transform into their Wyatt 6 forms, said Ratchet the Owl. JJ said each member should get their own space. Maybe a combination of where they were from before they were collected. The funhouse where they were kept and somewhere that resonates with their new free personas. Corey said a mixture of all of these. If you did turn them into the same place, I think it would just get a bit boring. That's interesting. So don't just do one location. Mix them up, and actually that's a message that has really come across strong since we started doing this. I think the very first one we read was about different rooms in the funhouse, which is kind of interesting. I'd like to see Mercy's bedroom. To be honest, I think he just lived in that box. I think that was his bedroom, and I think Abby just lived in the window, to be honest. So I don't know, maybe we can't do much exploring there, but there must have been a kitchen. Someone could have gone in the kitchen. Maybe someone could go in the bathroom. Like, there must have been other rooms. So, maybe we could explore that. And I agree. Maybe if we just kept doing the same place, it would get a bit boring. But, well, in that same breath, I'd say the funhouse never got boring. We found different ways of, that was the backdrop. But what we did in the funhouse was obviously the most important thing. But I'm definitely getting that mixture word coming through very strong from you guys. John said, I would like to see them use a different place for each member. Joel said, after how they finally arrived, I'm going to say anywhere they damn well want. Ollie said, I think all of the above would do nicely. K-Cool said the Firefly Funhouse because it represents Bray. B Hockey said, definitely Whataburger. John said, I think they should just do it round Rob Fee's house. Everything's round Rob Fee's house. Ryan's Harem Adventures said, I think it should be all of the above, but have the same dark death tone like they did with the Firefly Funhouse. Richard wants a darker version of the Funhouse as well. Wrestling Takes said, I'd love to see Bo try and do the funhouse, but fail. Like, there's no claps or cheers. Lights flicker, and he slowly loses it until it becomes a manifestation of his mind. He said he wanted to be Bray, and that's a story that you could tell. Very interesting. Anthony said somewhere dark and creepy, like woods or cabin. I'd be happy with either of those. I don't think Funhouse, though. Bray did a lot of his work from the Firefly Funhouse. I think the Wyatt 6 should do their promos somewhere dark and creepy. Salads says the words of a mixture of them, the woods, or a mixture of them, all why? Because they somehow have things to do with Bray. Like Rowan in the Woods, he could be talking about the man in the cave losing Bray and Harper, or about Braun being final brother left. Nikki Cross could bring up Alexa, her friendship. So I'm sensing there a mixture again, woods and a mixture of different places, like cave mentioned. Roger said, I agree with most here. Hold them in various spots that tie back to their why. Firefly Funhouse for Howdy makes sense. What caused the others to be rejected? At some point, they may have to distance from Bray in order to stand on their own merits, and this would give them a chance to do so. Jay Jones said, I keep hearing sounds of train tracks clinking together, so maybe an old train station. Oh, I love that. Love that. I love that because it takes the story in a direction that's not obvious. It takes the story in a direction that would have you questioning, why are we here? You know, if you go back to the Funhouse, we know it, and we know why we're there. There's not really much mystery as to why we go back to that. If you go to the cave, if you follow the QR codes, we know why we're there. You could probably dress it up to look really cool, and I'd definitely be down for going there. If we go to the cabin, we know why we're there. This is completely out of left field. Like, why are we in a train station? But an abandoned train station, which is where they all now reside, gives that group its own personality. And I think then you can start to really flesh that out and explore the surrounding area and maybe give each their own space. And then, you know, because it's a brand new space, it should be easy to make sure that whatever you show, you can create smaller versions of it and then have that as like a travel-in set backstage at like Raw or at premium live events, so that they've got a background that's suited to them. Oh, I think that's really interesting. I think that's really interesting. I like that. I like that a lot. Matthew said a mixture of all of them because the Wyatt family did their promos everywhere. Chris said a cabin with an old rocking chair. Harvey said, I think a mixture of these three. Nikki seems better for a cabin because Randy burnt the house down. Mercy seems better for the Funhouse because Mercy and the box felt perfect. Rowan and Gacy seem better for the woods because they give Demon Winnie the Pooh vibes. Demon Winnie the Pooh vibes. Love it. I want to give those vibes in my streams. Drama Free Zone said the beauty of it is that the promos can be anywhere. RMG said the idea is to honor Wyatt's legacy and keep its originality at the moment, but also with time, the Fireflies have to embrace at some point that Taylor will eventually evolve on his own whilst honoring Bray. They're at the moment hitting us with familiar elements, and I love it. So RMG would keep it all familiar. Kid Prophecy said, I would say a mixture, but my favorite would be the Funhouse, just as it was in Bo's interview, and the woods. Metal Shui said, according to reports, it seems that Vince McMahon's office is available. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine that? Sean said, a mixture of places that relate to Bray, Bo, Howdy, and The Fiend, as well as Wyndham and Taylor, but under the guise of it being therapy sessions. But the only relief comes from the actions of the Wyatt Six. Do you know, I was just thinking then, you said a mixture of places that relate to Bray and Bo. And I was thinking, what about if you had like their old house? I saw a deletion the other day. There was a video doing the rounds of Matt Hardy and the Hardy compound. And there was a group of people, I don't know, System or something, went to go and see them. And I saw this deletion clip. And they went in the Hardy compound. One of the rooms had been decorated. I thought this was so weird, but also quite interesting. One of the rooms had been decorated to look exactly like their house when they were kids. You opened it up, and in this big room was the kitchen, the living area. Like, it looked, the wallpaper, the pictures on the wall, everything was exactly as it was when Jeff and Matt were kids. Same furniture, same TV set. It was really trippy, man. Really trippy to just open it up, go in, and they were in this like room exactly as it was. 40 odd years ago. I wonder if you could do something like that. I wonder if you could do something along those lines. That would be interesting, because that really stuck with me from the deletion video I saw the other day that they did in like TNA. I didn't watch TNA. I only saw this video doing the rounds, but yeah, as you said, a mixture of places that relate to Bray and Bo. That could be interesting. Even if it's not that, there's maybe a thread there that you can pull and explore, you know? Brandon said the Firefly Funhouse was the puppet's home, so it only makes sense to do most of the promos there in the beginning. Snowstorm said the dark room used with the door and using therapy is great for now. Would be cool to see them use versions of all with a black-grey colour filter over whilst transitioning into ring time. Then it would be appropriate to create a new space as time evolves, said Snowstorm. Matt's Dagger said, in our hearts and in our minds. New Tale said, WWE headquarters, just because it would be funny AF. It's Bryn again said, I also think it would be cool if each member had their own special place, like Nikki, Cabin, Dexter, Woods. CWM McDonald said, Firefly Funhouse to use it for Bray. Rib says, everywhere. Just go everywhere. Christopher said, I think a mixture would be great. along with after they've destroyed something on Raw. For example, imagine if they cut a promo in Gorilla after they completely destroy it, just to let the image of what they did stay in your mind. Brandon says all of them. Dave said in the wrestlers' homes. So you could have someone in Chad's, the other wrestlers' homes. Right. I think you could definitely do that, but obviously you can't do that on a weekly basis. And you can't really have like a traveling backstage set for that. This was the great thing about the Funhouse. The Funhouse was big and you could do big episodes in the proper set, but then there was a little smaller one that traveled around so that you could still do your promos backstage and it seemed like you were in it. In the Funhouse, right? I think we knew that he wasn't really because there was no window, there was no door, right? But there was enough to make it seem like he's in his Funhouse, right? Obviously with this, you know, you can only do these a few times a year where you're in a feud with someone and then you go around their house and you're also probably going to have to trash someone's house. This was the problem. We've seen it a few times where we go round people's homes and it's, you know, a bit spooky being in your opponent's home, invading their personal space, but you can't really trash anything because it is their home, you know? Unless you kind of rent a place, put a load of stuff in there and act like it's their home, but it's not really their home, then you could trash it. Let's read. Let's see what Dave says. So in the wrestlers' homes, you could have someone in Chad's living room. The next week, someone in Michael Cole's kitchen. And then someone in Braun Strowman's home. It would make the wrestlers feel more scared. So, I mean, I get it. I totally understand. I don't know that you'd be able to do something backstage, but I think that you could definitely do that when we're kind of in feuds with certain people. You could certainly do that a few times throughout the year. Austin said, I think it should honestly be all depending on what members they are talking to. Like, for instance, Eric could be in the woods because of the original Wyatt family. Brigman says the ring. So, okay, but what would you do with the ring? I suppose that's the question. Would you just have it normal? Or would you decorate it like Alexa's Playgrounds? Guinevere said, it would be good to see each character talking in the Funhouse. Dean said, a mixture of all of these, because Bo, when he comes back, Alexa can have promos from the Funhouse, Joe can have promo from the cabin, Nikki and Eric and Dexter can do promos from the woods, and it would be fitting for their characters. Chris wants them to be in a cabin. David said in the woods, like witchcraft ceremony, which is interesting. Howdy's going to get you said, how about the swamp where Bray fought Braun? That's a good idea. I mean, there was a cabin there. And what I like about that is, again, it's scalable. So you can scale it down and create a little backstage set that can be used for like backstage promos. So yeah, I don't mind that. I really don't mind that. I'm still, I think, in love with the abandoned train station idea. That's just caught me out of nowhere, and there's just so much imagery and stuff that I can see with that I'm kind of in love with that. But I don't mind that, the swamp and the cabin and all of that stuff. Stephanie said cabin for a change of scenery. Steve says mixture. Danny said a mixture, like their go-to getaway. Magic Dax said in Daze's bedroom whilst Daze is asleep, and they could sit on the edge of your bed talking into the camera, and then you wake up confused and scared. That's pretty much how I wake up every day, confused and scared. King Joker said a mixture of all of them. I think if each of them has to sit down, either with themselves or Howdy, different locations would be part of them, remembering who they are, and that's what the interviews are pretty much about, which could explain why we're in the Funhouse for Bo, said King Joker. CM Chunk said, wherever it is, it should be as vague as possible to keep people guessing whether what we're seeing is real or in a character's mind. Mike said, it depends on the context. If it's meant to mimic a psychological response, it should be the funhouse to show us it's psychological. If they kidnap someone, maybe they should use a cabin or compound of some sort. Walter said, I think they should hold them in the Firefly Funhouse, and as the weeks go on, they feel happier. Then the lights start to brighten in the Funhouse. So you would have it quite dark, and you would then have it getting lighter, and as they get happier. Why would they be getting happier? Is it because they are freeing people, maybe? The more people that they help, maybe the happier they're becoming. I do like the idea, and it has been mentioned earlier in this video, about an evolving place. Somewhere where, you know, it's either getting worse and it's degrading, or it's getting better the more people they're helping. Like scenery that actually is reflecting the mood is kind of interesting. Al said a mixture would be good to keep us guessing where they are. Isaac wants a mixture as well. I think mixture's the word of this video, isn't it? James said a darker version of the Funhouse, as the Firefly Funhouse was Bray's, and it shouldn't be brought back as it wouldn't be the same, but a darker Funhouse would suit the Wyatt 6. Word of Wrestling said, I think that Bo should be the main talker. Then this way it can be done with all of them in the ring, giving that aura. I do like the vignettes as they add mystery and a bit of graphics to keep fitting with Nightbirds. But I do hope we get Funhouse therapy. So you think that it's vignettes and mystery, bit of graphics to keep it fitting with Nightbirds. So you would do it in a mysterious place where we have to try and maybe look at the clues to figure out where they are. Okay. Matt said, mix it up, stay fresh, keep it ominous, mysterious, and creepy. Color Red said the therapist's office. Joanne said a mixture of all these, dear pal. Fritzl Mania said Uncle Howdy therapy session with each person, similar to how they did Bo's. Yes, but I think we're talking long term. We're not really so focused on these series of vignettes, because I agree they'll just do these similar, but more long term, where should be the setting be? Penalty Box said, in a rundown old church, let's go. Let's go. I'm feeling that this group is looking to save people with repentance and a rebirth and baptism. Love it. The only problem I can see is that if you start to bring religion in, obviously you've got lots of, you know, you'll have all the different religions that are watching. So, you know, putting them into a church, you know, people... It's like politics, really. You can't mess around with religion so much. Just like you don't want to really be delving into politics so much. I'm thinking about it because I'm like, could we get away with it? Could we do it? Would there be people offended? I'm sure there would, but I do like it. I like these other places, you know? Rather than places we've been before. I like something different, something new, personally. I still like the abandoned train station, but I'm down for like the church idea. But I'm just thinking religion. It's a sensitive, touchy subject, isn't it? Sean said a mixture of all of those mentioned, but since they introduced the cabin, I'd like to see more stuff from there and not just the funhouse. I do think the funhouse ran its course. The cabin should be the main focus. Rico said, let's see how many rooms and properties Rob Fee owns. Then we can hit the callback location from previous videos. Yes, we'll just keep doing it in different Rob Fee houses. Chase said, I would love to see the cave at some point. I would hope they have personal places, though. Nikki, Firefly Funhouse, Swamp, Bray's hut, kind of. Eric may be trapped, like rambling in the jar. It's a long shot, but would be good to see. Gav said, I like the Firefly Funhouse. Feels like it could be somewhere Bo could go for peace and thinking time. Just him with his own thoughts as the puppets have now been set free. Daze, can you tell me how to find your second channel? I can't find links. Well, it should just be Wrestling Daze clips. It should be, if you go to the Wrestling Daze channel, you should see that there's on the homepage there a whole load of opinion videos and review videos. I think the playlist is called Opinions and Reviews. If you click on those are all taken from my other channel, so it should just take you there straight away. So there's actually videos on the main channel that when you click on them will automatically take you to the second channel. So there we go. So Gav likes the Firefly Funhouse. Fisticuffs said wherever their characters resonate most. So Bo, the Firefly Funhouse, Gacy, Performance Center. Oh, right, because of NXT. Rowan, the Cabin, maybe with a rocking chair. Loomis, Under the Ring, and Nikki, Alexa's Playground, question mark. Ryan said the door only really makes sense for the Funhouse, but I think the Funhouse was built out of the cabin in Bray's mind, which is why it looks like a swamp cabin. Funhouse could be wherever you want it to be. It was dark for Bo because of the hurts. Honorary Zeus says, to me, it depends who conducts the interviews. If it's Howdy, then the Funhouse works. If it's each character interviewing themselves, then a unique location for each would be cool. Watson said Uncle Howdy should interrogate Gareth Southgate. He should. You're right. Scott said, I'm up for a mixture to keep things interesting and to relate back to Bray Wyatt's career. Sam said, hear me out, in the woods, the same woods where Orton burnt the Wyatt house, a big old creepy tree house would be cool. A tree house would be cool. That would be fun. I suppose you would get people questioning, did they build a tree house? And the answer to that would be yes. Yes, they did. Fugi Kruger said, I have mixed feelings. I would love to see the Firefly Funhouse used, but will that be the same without Bray? I'd also love to see the old Wyatt compound used, since Rowan would know of its location because he lived there, but wasn't a cave mentioned during Nightbirds? It was. I mean, that cave, though, it's not a physical place. It's, again, you know, it's Plato's cave. It's about prisoners being trapped, thinking what they're seeing on the walls are real life, but they're actually just projections. So they're not seeing reality. And so it's about you being trapped. It's about you and your life and what you see being your worlds. But there's actually other world out there. You know, there's a whole world that you're not seeing, you know. I suppose in a way, equestrian. Yeah. Think about horses that do that dance. I don't know anything about that. But there's some people where that's their whole world. You know, that's everything. They're looking after the horses and going to those kinds of meetups and having those kinds of competition. That's a whole world that's absolutely alien to me. I don't know anything about it. I don't even know why I mentioned the words, but I did. And I've not backtracked. So, yeah, like, you know, it's kind of like you being in your own personal cave and what you're seeing is your reality, but there's so much more that's outside of that. So you could go to a cave. We spoke about this earlier. There would be no problems with going to a cave to kind of symbolize that, but don't know, you know, if that's going to make for good background. You could maybe dress it up in some way, but how would you dress it up? Is that where they live? Is that just where they go and perform ceremonies? I don't know. This is obviously what we're exploring at the moment, but definitely food for thought. And I think if they did do stuff in a cave, those of us that followed the Nightbird campaign would be like quite excited. Ronnie Mac said a darkened version of Significant Places. Bo, Howdy, Funhouse. Inside Mercy, Dexter Loomis speaking to the old Dexter. Imagine Mercy, Dexter speaking to the old Dexter, who doesn't talk and just draws. We pan out and it's a darkened index wedding venue. The seats are empty. signaling being left behind. I mean, I feel like I don't know if we're talking about this is where we should do the promos each week, or if we're just focused on the interview thing. I'm not really too worried about the interviews. I feel like they're going to be around for a few weeks and that's it. But where do you do the promos on a more permanent basis? So, you know, would you do it somewhere like an abandoned wedding reception for Dexter? Or do we just not need to focus on that? Like, that was part of Dexter's backstory. And in all fairness, a key part of his backstory. But I don't think they showed us it falling apart. I think that's a bit of a problem. Like, whenever we saw Dexter, him and Indy were in a great relationship. We never actually saw that relationship deteriorate. So, I don't know. That I struggle a little bit with that. Just because we never saw that deteriorate. So is that something that we need to focus on? If we focus on it, I feel like we've got to bring a lot of people up to speed with a story that was never that focused on the main roster. You kind of need to know your history with NXT. We then need to bring people up to speed that relationship fell apart. I don't know if there's just too much backstory there that needs to be fleshed out. That would be my concern with doing like the wedding reception thing. But I do love the fact that it is very personal. So I feel like there's definitely something to that, but I can equally see some of the pitfalls to it as well. So very interesting, Ronnie. Very interesting. I don't know that we'll go down those roads, but let's see. Let's see. Making each set personal to the character. Definitely see where you're coming from. Term said, I'd say do it in the Firefly Funhouse, but make it dark and scary. I'm guessing that's meant to be scary. Blake said, a mixture of all of these. Bo should hold his in the Funhouse, since that's his dark place. I'm thinking Rowan goes to the woods, since the Wyatt compound was burnt to the ground by Orton. It would make sense for Nikki. We don't know if she's the bride in the cabin. We think she is, but you're right, we don't quite know. Mark said a mixture would be good, but only Bo in the Funhouse. Either Bo or Alexa have to be the key to bring it back to life. Joe said, just wondering, are you solely a Wyatt 6 channel? No more Unseen or figures or other things we enjoyed, says Joe. No, we're doing a mixture of stuff. So, I mean, I won't apologize for the Wyatt 6 stuff because Unseen videos used to get about 8,000 to 10,000 views and Wyatt 6 videos get about double that. So it says to me that this is where the community's focus is. This is what the community are more engaged with. And that shows itself with how the videos are being received. So my job, if you will, is to provide content that the most amount of people would want to be watching and engaging with, because obviously we want to try and satisfy the most amount of people. And certainly the Wyatt 6 videos have been achieving that. So, but obviously we can't talk about Wyatt 6 all the time because, well, now that Nightbird has ended, and now that we are like a week removed from the arrival of the group, I think the talking points are still going to be there, but they're going to probably lessen, if you will. Things will settle back down, and then that will give us opportunity to do Unseen videos again. But trying to do Wyatt 6 videos and trying to go through everyone's thoughts and try and do Unseen video. I mean, Unseen videos probably take about 5-6 hours to compile, because you have to go through a whole day's worth of social media to find those gems and kind of put them into a video. So I feel like there's not a way of doing that and doing the Wyatt 6. It has to be one or the other. And as we said, you know, Wyatt 6, there's more people that are engaging with that. And so that says to me that that's where the conversation is. So Unseen will definitely come back. It's not over by any means. Figure videos, I think, have kind of took a backseat years ago, to be honest. Toy hunts, we've done a couple this year, and we'll continue to do those. I'm interested in doing some around San Diego Comic-Con, and maybe having a look at what figures get shown there, because I still love figures. But, yeah, we just go where the conversation is, to be honest. And the conversation over the past few months has definitely been the Wyatt 6. Right, Rose Hearts said Wyatt family compounds. Woodrow Call said, originally I was wanting cabin woods. Now I think funhouse, but only dark and lifeless. During the interviews lit only by lanterns. Chris says the cave. Brendan says the Wild Samoans, of course, yes. Seeker tragically passing away. Dave said, my theory is that the Wyatt members will wrestle under their old names, but when they're hurt or need that extra motivation, the alter egos will show up on the Titantron to give them that extra push. Kieran said Funhouse could actually act as a kind of purgatory, a place where the members are cleansed of their pasts and reborn. Basically, confessions in the house of Bray. Ads said never in just one place, all the above, and chuck a cave in there as well. Chuck in a cave, get a cave in there. Rodney said, I think it's Funhouse, but go to the barn where it all first began. That's interesting. I really like that. Go back to the OG barn. Axery said, I think Bo should hold his promos in the Funhouse. Howdy should do his promos in the woods or a cabin. Bo's promos can be normal and just regular might work, whilst Howdy's promos can be creepy and stalkish-like. Donna said mixture of all. Kai Chan said easy on the beach. Yes, that is so where we should go. We should go on the beach. Thomas said, I personally think it should be a mixture. Being this group is a tribute to Bray, have promos in the Funhouse to represent Bo's mental state, whilst also paying tribute to cult leader Bray by doing creepy promos in the woods. And we'll wrap things up here. I think we're sort of getting up to that hour mark now. LD said, Daze, I like how Bo was in the Firefly Funhouse, since that's where Bray did his promos. But I think the others should be a mixture of woods and cabin, since that's where the main places in the QR codes, maybe have them talk about the notes. So, LD, shout out to you. Again, mixture. So, mixture is very much the word of this video. So, lots of Firefly Funhouse. Lots of mixtures with cabins being mentioned, things along those lines. To be honest, I feel like I read those words so many times that message has really come across loud and clear. You know what I'm going to say, though? I do love the idea of somewhere different, and I do love something that's scalable, that we can scale down so that we can have it backstage, so that when we need to do promos that day, maybe there's some changes, or maybe we're not quite certain as to where a story's going and something gets changed in the script, so now we need to do a new promo. You're going to need that backstage set. So something that's different, something that's scalable. And I agree with you guys. There's no harm in revisiting the Funhouse at some point. There's no harm in the group wanting to ground themselves, and so they go and they do something in the woods, in the cabin. Equally, there's no harm in going around wrestlers' homes if you're feuding with them. I mean, we saw things like that happen quite a bit. You know, Seth Rollins going around Edge's house, LA Knight going around AJ Styles' house not that long ago. So, you know, that is something we see, and Wyatt 6 could definitely do that. So, yeah, I think there was a lot of interesting thoughts there. Lots for us to get our teeth into, mull over and chuck around. Let me know after you've heard all of this. What do you think now? What are your thoughts now? Has it brought some clarity to your mind? Was there something that you heard that really resonated with you? Let me know down in the comments below. Awesome, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Appreciate the support as always. We will have more videos on the way for you. Wyatt 6 and non-Wyatt 6 stuff. And, of course, we will be back on Friday as well as we get our teeth into this week's SmackDown. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.